Amritam Chemamabhayam Trimurno Daimurdasu. Someone else?
Adesu Sabhutani Pumsastiti Padovidu Amritam Shemamabhayam Trimono
Daimurdasu Padeshu in the 1/4 Sarva all Bhutani living entities Pumsa of the Supreme Person Stiti Pada the reservoir of all material opulence. Vidu, you should know. Amritam, deathlessness. Chemam, all happiness. Free from the anxiety of old age, diseases, etc. Abhayam, fearlessness. Trimurna, beyond the three higher planetary systems. Adayi, exist. Murdasu, beyond the material coverings. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be known as the supreme reservoir of all material opulences by the 1/4 of his energy in which all the living entities exist. Deathlessness, fearlessness, and freedom from the anxieties of old age and disease exist in the kingdom of God, which is beyond the three higher planetary systems and beyond the material coverings. Purport. Out of the total manifestations of the Sandhini energy of the Lord, 1/4 is displayed in the material world and 3/4 are displayed in the spiritual world. The Lord's energy is divided into three component parts, namely Sandhini, Samvit and Ladini. In other words, he is the full manifestation of existence, knowledge and bliss. In the material world, such a sense of existence, knowledge and pleasure is meagerly exhibited, and all living entities who are minute parts and parcels of the Lord are eligible to relish such consciousness of existence, knowledge and bliss very minutely in the liberated stage, whereas in the conditioned stage of material existence they can hardly appreciate what is the factual, existential, cognizable and pure happiness of life. The liberated souls who exist in far greater numerical strength than those souls in the material world can factually experience the potency of the above-mentioned Sandhini, Samvit and Ladini energies of the Lord in the matter of deathlessness, fearlessness and freedom from old age and disease. In the material world, the planetary systems are arranged in three spheres called Triloka or Svarga, Marcha and Patala, and all of them constitute only 1/4 of the total Sandhini energy. Beyond that is the spiritual sky, where the Vaikuntha planets exist beyond the coverings of the 7 material strata. In none of the Triloka planetary systems can one experience the status of immortality, full knowledge and full bliss. The upper 3 planetary systems are called Sattvika planets because they provide facilities for a long duration of life and relative freedom from disease and old age, as well as a sense of fearlessness. The great sages and saints are promoted beyond the heavenly planets to Mahaloka, but that also is not the place of complete fearlessness, because at the end of one kalpa the Mahaloka is annihilated and the inhabitants have to transport themselves to still higher planets. Yet even on these planets, no one is immune to death. There may be a comparative extension of life, expansion of knowledge and sense of full bliss, but factual deathlessness, fearlessness and freedom from old age, diseases, etc. are possible only beyond the material spheres of the coverings of the material sky. Such things are situated on the head Adayi Murdashu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be known as the supreme reservoir of all material opulences by the 1/4 of his energy in which all the living entities exist. Deathlessness, fearlessness, and freedom from the anxieties of old age and disease exist in the kingdom of God, which is beyond the 3 higher planetary systems and beyond the material coverings. So Prabhupada repeated this quite a number of times through this purport. The Sandini, the Samvit, Vadini, existence, knowledge and bliss. He says that a few times. Existence, knowledge and bliss. Sandini, Samvit, Ladini, and deathlessness, fearlessness, freedom from anxiety and old age diseases. So right throughout this purport, Prabhupada is very much stressing on these points. How many times the liberated souls, they can experience this Sandini, Samvit, Ladini, and this deathlessness and so on. So he's very much emphasizing on and actually repeating it over and over because we are very conditioned. And we are very, it's not easy for us, especially in the conditioned stage, to understand these things and what to speak of remember them. So you find here in the Bhagavatam, these points are repeated over and over again. Prabhupada in his purport repeats them over and over again. And it's necessary. It's necessary for us to hear these things over and over again. But anyway, now everyone in this world would like to have this position of, be freed from death, live forever, never, always young. This is Sandini, this is existential. And it's a natural feeling, existential, to always want to exist, to never, you find in all species of life, every species, every entity wants to avoid death. You see the spider, you chase it away, it runs off, it doesn't want to die. The bird, all the insects, they don't want to die. And someone comes to try to kill us, we don't want to die. Now, if we were just combination of chemicals evolved, where does all this feeling of what does it really matter? If we live or die. The chemicals don't want to live or die. So it doesn't make sense. But this innate feeling of wanting to continue to live and wanting to, not to be afraid. No one wants to be afraid. But there must be fear. Where there's, here, Samvit means knowledge. So when you don't have, now, Prabhupada points out here that Krishna has Sandini, Samvit, Ladini. These are his 3 component parts, the Lord's energy. These are the main categories of his energy. Sandini, Samvit, Ladini. Sandini, existence. Samvit, Ladini is Samvit is knowledge. Ladini is pleasure, bliss, eternality, knowledge and bliss, or existence, knowledge and bliss. So Krishna possesses these unlimitedly, and in the material world, of course, the living entities also can possess this eternality, knowledge and bliss, but not on the level of the Supreme Personality of God. But in the material world, the conditioned living entities, these things are experienced Prabhupada uses this word, in a very meagerly way. We have a sense of, existence. We have a sense of knowledge. We have a sense of bliss, but really we don't know what is bliss, what is real, bliss or happiness. Ananda, these words are used sometimes, bliss. But as far as the factual position of bliss, we don't really experience it. And as far as knowledge, we don't really experience knowledge. Everything is relative. Knowledge is relative, and existence. We've been these verses here, and I was speaking last week about our existence, our meager and human form of life. Now, Prabhupada comments here that in the upper planetary systems, Sattvika planets, there is a little bit more sense of existence. They live longer. In this world, we'd like to live a long time. We'd like to live youthful. We'd like to be young. If we could be young our whole lives. I mean, men like to be strong and handsome, and they like to be strong and handsome their whole lives. Women like to be young and beautiful, and they like to be young and beautiful their whole lives. And people go to a lot of length to try to stay young and beautiful or strong and handsome. The endeavours, they work out, they go to the gym, lift weights and sweat away, and the women, they do the same thing, or they run, they do all sorts of things, just trying to keep young. All the cosmetic industry, billions and billions of dollars to spend creams and lotions and this and that and the other thing. You put on the cream and you can smear away the wrinkles. I remember my mother, she used to have a cabinet full of all sorts of creams, You'd have to try to find something. You'd have to go all through all this stuff. Putting on this, putting on that. And what's it for? To try to keep young. Try to keep young. And when the wrinkle appears, where did this wrinkle come from? We have to do something about it. So everyone wants to try to remain young, but you're fighting a losing battle. It can never be won. But in the higher planetary systems now, they live a long time. We were describing this life. They live a long time, millions of years. And also there's a description, they stay young. There's a description of the demigods, they stay young their whole lives. They don't age. Some demigods, of course, they're all different for different types of demigods, but some demigods, they just in the, they live the whole life, they're just youthful. And just in the last, parts of their life, they start to age a little bit, hardly noticeable. These are some of the descriptions given. So they have and their knowledge is greater, their pleasure is greater. Now it's all in the material world. Listen, now we very much live a controlled type of existence, and here is mention of the upper planetary systems and Mahaloka, and then above that Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka. But and Prabhupada mentions here the seven. The covering, this has been mentioned, I think, in the previous verse in the purport. There was mentioned about the different layers, the coverings of the universe, the earth. Now, according to Vedic astronomy, the earth, there's a description of the 4 billion miles, all the planetary, this universe, the internal part of it is 4 billion miles. So then there's a covering. We live in the inside. Imagine a football, but a football that is got all these layers on the outside. And so if the universe on the inside is 4 billion miles, and the earth layer is 10 times that. So that's 40 billion miles of earth covering, and then 10 times that of water. What's that? 400 billion. And then 10 times that of... So, we can't even conceive of it. So, our existence is in this huge kind of football or egg that's got these huge thick layers Of course, they get more subtle as they go out, but they're thick layers, and then in the middle of it, there's this opening full of planetary systems. So when we look out, now scientists may think they're looking out and seeing other universes, but they're not. They're just seeing the different planetary systems, because you cannot see out of this universe, because there's coverings, and each universe is the same. So someone situated in one universe cannot see another universe. Planetary systems maybe, but other universes no. The coverings are there. Just like that's that night description. I think someone referred to that description of Krishna and Arjuna travelling to see Lord Mahavishnu. You know that story. Many of you know that story. That one time when Arjuna was visiting Dwarka. Well, before that time, the Brahmana, his wife, gave birth to a son, but the son immediately after birth died. So the Brahman and his wife were very distressed, crying, and he would take the child, the dead body of the child, and place it at go inside the court of King Ugrasena and place it there. And he would berate King Ugrasena. He would berate him. What type of king are you that these things happen in your kingdom, that a child is born and dies right after birth? So each year that would happen. Each year his wife would give birth to another son, and each time the son would die, he would again go. So this happened 9 times. 9 times. and at the 9th time, Arjuna just happened to be in the court, and when the Brahmana was crying and speaking against King Ugrasena, each time he would do that, Arjuna was there, and he said, "Is there no one here who can protect this Brahmana? I will protect you." So the Brahmana at first scoffed at Arjuna. "Who do you think you are? You can protect. You've got Ugrasena here, you've got Pradyumna here, you've got Krishna here. If they can't protect our child, and how can you do it? I am Arjuna." And he began to speak, "I'm the will of the Gandhiva bog. So I'll protect you." So in due course, the Brahmana's wife gave birth again. But the Brahmana, before she gave birth, the Brahmana called Arjuna. He went there, and by mantra and arrows, he totally enveloped the house from the sides, from everywhere, that no one could get in. Subtle or gross personality could not get in. The gross couldn't get in by the arrows, and the subtle ones couldn't get in by the mantras. The mantras were protecting. So Arjuna thought he'd had everything up, but as soon as the child was born, this one just went in the self-same body. He rose up in the sky, somehow went through the covering of the arrows and mantras, and just disappeared. So then the Brahmana were crying again. "Who did this Arjuna?" They were castigating Arjuna. "Just see, braggart came here thinking he could do something," and the same thing happened again. And so Arjuna was just beside himself, and he went everywhere. He went to Samyamana, he went to Yamaraj's abode, he went to Indra, he went all over the universe by his power of his mantra. He could travel, but he couldn't find the child. And so then he had given a promise to the Brahmana that if I cannot protect your child, I will enter the fire. So he was preparing to do like that. But Krishna said, "No, don't do that. I know where these children are. Please come with me." So they boarded on Krishna's chariot and went through the skies, through all the planetary systems. And there's a nice description there you can read in the Krishna book and the Srimad Bhagavatam, going past all the planetary systems and going past the Loka mountain range and then through all the coverings. And then it's mentioned that on the other side of the Loka mountain range it became all dark. It became dark, and even the horses, Krishna's horses, were bewildered where to go, and Krishna sent his Sudarshan chakra to light up the whole everything. And so they went and they came to Lord Mahavishnu. Krishna took Arjuna to Lord Mahavishnu, And Lord Mahavishnu explained, I wanted to see Krishna and yourselves here because your appearance in the world, Krishna, is rarely seen. And I've taken these children. And so there was a whole discussion going on between Lord Mahavishnu and Krishna and Arjuna. And then they came back again, and they brought all the children of the Brahmanas back again. So that's a very nice description there of giving an idea of the extent of the coverings of the universe just to go through. So no one can avoid. Our position is quite puny when you hear these descriptions, and although we'd like to remain young and even be deathless. I mean, they've been working on how to be deathless, but it can never be done. Death is concomitant factor of life in the material world. If everyone lived forever, you would think that there would just be more and more people, and we'd get pretty crowded. Everyone, but you can't. I mean, there's one story of you may have heard this story of a princess. Her name was Savitri. There's a story of Savitri Satyavan. Have you heard this story? Savitri is in the Mahabharata. Prabhupada used to tell this story. Savitri Satyavan. Now, Savitri was a princess, and she was coming to marriageable age, and her parents said that, well, see why don't you see who you would be interested to marry? And so she travelled everywhere, and she came upon a very handsome prince. His name was Satyavan, who was looking after his elderly parents. He was a prince, and different versions of this story, but Prabhupada tells it. And she fell in love with him, and she came back and told her parents that I want to marry this Satyavan. And now Narad Muni came there and asked who is she chosen to be her husband, and they said, oh, Satyavan. Oh, that's not a very good choice, he said, because according to his astrological chart, he's going to die soon. He's not going to live very long. So the king and the queen tried to dissuade her from marrying Satyavan. Said that don't marry him. Pick someone else, because he's not going to live very long. That's his chart. His chart says he's not going to live very long. But she was very attached to him. She was in love with him, and she was determined to marry him. So the king and the queen relented and arranged the whole situation. And so she married him, and they lived for some time very happily. And she, of course, they both knew that she wouldn't let him out of her sight. She was expecting any time he was going to die. So one time they were in the forest, and all of a sudden he fell down dead right in her lap. His time was up. He fell down dead right in her lap. So somehow or other, she could see that somehow or other Yamaraj himself came to take the soul. Usually the Yamadutas come. Well, the Yamadutas for sinful person. But Yamaraj himself came to take the soul. And she could see him. Normally you can't see the Yamadutas or Yamaraj. But she could see Yamaraj. And she was holding on to her husband. She wouldn't let him go. No, you have to let him go. I've got to take the soul. And now it's his time. And she was holding on. No, let go or you'll be punished. Tell the story. You'll be punished for not letting go. So she let go. And so Yamaraj took the soul off. But she was following him. And so Yamaraj kept going, and she was still following him. So Yamaraj became a little compassionate and said, look, young girl, just look, go back. I'll arrange that you have a beautiful son. So just go back. But she was still following him. So I looked around again and said, why are you still following me? And she said, well, how can I have a son if you're taking my husband? So Yamaraj was caught out. Yamaraj was caught out. Well, she's right. So he returned the soul, and I haven't read much more of this story, but and they lived on. So she cheated the death for her husband. But that's now Prabhupada tells that story in relation to how one should be determined in Krishna consciousness, just like Savitri. She was a special girl. That her parents were childless, and they prayed to Mother Savitri, the demigoddess, and she was born by her blessing, and she was named Savitri. But she was very special. And Prabhupada says, yes, see, the determination of Savitri, even Yamaraj came, she was determined to keep her husband there. So you have to be determined in your Krishna consciousness. And even if you're not successful in one life, at least, he said, in the next life you'll get a human birth, come back as a human and continue on in your Krishna consciousness. So there's rare exceptions where someone can avoid the death, at least for a husband she was blessed like that. But as far as the position now, the liberated souls, they can experience Ladini, blissfulness, samvit, knowledge, but us, very, very meager. So we really don't know. There was nice discussion. I think Giridhari Prabhu was telling some stories yesterday of Krishna's bliss. Krishna experiences the bliss unlimitedly, and the knowledge unlimitedly. And we can also have a partial, but on the material platform, hardly we can experience anything at all. But we mistake things in this world to be blissful. We mistake things to be. And fearlessness, how can one be fearless? Now, fearlessness is directly related to knowledge. If you have knowledge, then you can be fearless. Just like if at night time, if we were to all come back at night time, it's dark night, and we're sitting here, and we just turn out the lights, then we don't know what's going on in the temple. We hear a noise somewhere, we hear a sound, we don't know. There's a sense of fear. Because why? Because we don't know where that sound came from. So this is just a crude example. So because we didn't know, that there's fear there. And then anxiety, as far as old age, disease. Also in the higher planetary systems, they don't get sick. And even in the other ages, in the Satya Yuga, especially in the Satya Yuga and the other yugas, people didn't get sick. Now, in Kali Yuga, everyone's sick. They have to build more and more of these huge hospitals just to cater to people who are sick with something or other. I just recently had an episode, and I went in the hospital to see how they run off their feet in there. There's so many people coming in. Practically the nurses and the doctors haven't got time to scratch their noses because there's someone. Even when it was time for me to go out, the nurse asked me that, is someone coming to pick you up? Oh yeah, they'll be here in a little while. I'll just ring and find out. And then I rang and he'll be here in about 15 minutes. And she says, well, why don't you go and wait out in the foyer? Because we need your bed for someone else. There's so many people coming through. It's just, that's crazy. And so people are getting more sick. So in the other ages, this wasn't so prevalent. and it's the lifestyle, and the karma, the reactions, all these types of things. So there's no sickness in the higher planetary system, but ultimately it's not going to be continue forever. Also, whether you go to Mahaloka or Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka. So this is the point Prabhupada is emphasizing and stressing on, that come to the spiritual position, because that is the factual position of fearlessness and free from anxiety. Prabhupada I remember one lecture, he said that we want to go, where's it, Melbourne I think, he said our goal is to go to the Vaikuntha. He said here in this world is Kuntha. I remember. He said this is Kuntha. It is a place of anxiety. Place of anxiety. But we want to go to the Vaikuntha, the place of no anxiety. So who is not anxious about something or other? Who is not anxious? Who is not in anxiety? Who is not afraid? Everyone's afraid. Even one can externally present themselves as unafraid, but everyone's afraid. You've got to be afraid. If you're in ignorance, you've got to be afraid. You've got to be afraid. You've got to be in anxiety, and your happiness is very meager, paltry happiness. But only when we come to the spiritual understanding can we begin to approach, and we come to our liberated position. Hare Krishna. Just read this again. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be known as the supreme reservoir of all material opulences by the 1/4 of his energy, in which all the living entities exist. A deathlessness, fearlessness, and freedom from the anxieties of old age and disease exists in the kingdom of God, which is beyond the 3 higher planetary systems and beyond the material coverings. Any questions? Yes, bro.
Maharaj, we often hear Krishna consciousness is a science. This is related to having determination in Krishna consciousness. But with the science experiment, you see that everything has to be completely perfect, and you can't have one, for a complex machine, one tiny little thing's wrong, you won't get the result. But it seems as though even though we can't do all the process completely perfect, that we still somehow or other make progress. So in that sense, could it be said that there's also a big aspect of Krishna consciousness which is sort of like an art as opposed to science?
Sort of like?
An art as opposed to science, because it seems though even though we can't do the process completely perfect at times, but over time we still seem to make advancement. Is that?
Well, we get a lot of mercy. There's one thing, the process is actually perfect, and the goal is perfect. Our application may be imperfect, and it is imperfect, especially in the beginning stage. It's imperfect. But by the mercy of Guru and by the mercy of Krishna, Ananyas Chintayantam Ayajana Paip. It is said that I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. Krishna says that. So I carry what they lack. So we're not, even though we're performing devotional stuff imperfectly, Krishna is very kind on us. That is his mercy, and Guru is very kind. The Vaishnavas are very kind. They Lord Chaitanya especially is very, very kind, very, very compassionate. So he overlooks, if one is endeavouring in a very sincere way, he overlooks the faults and he overlooks the imperfect application of following the process, and he grants us some measure of advancement. He reciprocates according to our endeavour and our sincerity. But one should not abuse that. And Prabhupada used to warn us about that. Don't abuse that. Krishna is giving us his mercy. Lord Chaitanya is giving us his mercy. We are following Krishna consciousness, and by his mercy, even though imperfectly performed, we are still making some level of advancement. That's his mercy. But don't abuse it, take it for granted. Prabhupada, even one time I heard him say, once, twice, 3 times you're out. You can, in other words, you can abuse once, twice, 3, but whether he's going to keep forgiving and that's another thing. That's up to Krishna. So he's always viewing our activities and observing. But Krishna is very, very merciful, and we're very lucky in this age to we get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda. And so we're very, very lucky in that sense. So yes, even though imperfectly, and sometimes we slip up, sometimes we go back again to the material ways, but nevertheless, if we sincerely keep endeavouring, praying for them, praying and associating nicely with devotees, and trying to follow the process, Krishna will always give his mercy. Yes, Prabhu.
So as you mentioned, the diameter of the universe 4 billion miles, but are you aware of the distance from top to bottom? I've never actually seen that.
Sorry?
From the top, the universe to the bottom, at 4 billion across, you mentioned.
Well, it says the diameter.
Yeah.
Well, the diameter. It's the description is like it's round and such. So the diameter is taken to be in all directions.
Okay.
If you talk about a diameter of a thing, it usually means whether it's up or down or going out to the side. It usually means that's the distance. So there's different. It's what did I say? 4 billion.
Yeah.
4 billion. Yeah. 4 billion is the description, that's the diameter. So that's what I've read. We take it to mean that's wherever it is, up or down. It's not that up and down is different from going out this way. I've always understood it in that way.
Yeah. Because I've seen different scientists, they talk about certain stars, whatever, are so many millions of light years away, and it just seems like it's just the distance is too great to be within the universe.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to make sense.
Well, you're talking about modern sciences calculates in that way. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't tally up to the Vedic presentation. I don't know how they arrive at those figures, but we go by what's presented in the Shastra, in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so the Bhagavatam says the diameter is 4 billion. They say millions of light years. I don't know what that and then they say they're seeing. They're saying they're seeing other universes. But how can they see other universes? They're not seeing beyond the material coverings. They can't. How can they see beyond the material coverings? It's not possible. So the Vedic explanation is sometimes similar and sometimes different to what's being presented in the modern era.
I just wanted to mention something that's very wonderful that was sometimes noticed in that pastime of Krishna going to Mahavishnu. Because we have other stories in the Puranas when there's that king and he goes up to see Lord Brahma, he has to wait for a moment.
Sorry?
There's that story about king and he goes up to heavenly planets and he has to wait for some time to see Lord Brahma, and during that time he goes back to his realm. It's like multiple generations have gone past because time changes. But when we see with Krishna and Arjuna go out of the universe, so the conversation with Mahavishnu, which means he's breathing out universes, and Krishna is totally transcendental to time because he goes back. Quite amazing.
Obviously, yeah, that's a good point, because Krishna can just control everything. And he brought back the children in their baby bodies. So now Mahavishnu had kept them there in those baby bodies. So it's like a one breath, the universe has come out, they come back in, that's gazillions of years or whatever it is. So somehow or other, Krishna just kept the time the same and arranged everything so that Arjuna could come back. Yeah, normally you would think if you've gone out of the universe, that time to go there. And then by the time they got back, the whole universe would have been over. So that's an interesting point. Yeah. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol.